Good morning, everybody. Rachel Haney here today with Central Indiana Real Estate Association, Investors Association. That is CIREA, as we all know it. And today we are here with Sterling Davis and Mark Dolfini. How are you guys doing?
Good. Good.
Doing awesome. Thank you.
It's a beautiful day out today. Sterling, looks like you're outside.
Yeah, enjoying it on my porch. Hopefully the neighborhood kids don't come out yelling.
Or you could just be like taking a little break from the kids, just kind of speaking out.
Exactly. If you see somebody pop up behind me, just know.
That's great. So today this is another video for the trending topics that we have going on right now from our experts in real estate investing. So Mark Dolfini and Sterling Davis, they are very well known for property management. So Sterling is with Ethosity Property Management, and he's also Vice President of CIREA, and Mark Dolfini is the creator of Landlord Coach and writer of the Time Wealthy Investor. So these two guys definitely have the credentials to tell us a little bit about their thoughts on where things stand and just kind of what we're all going through, the changes and transitions, and how to adapt through COVID-19. So I just wanted to ask some basic questions to you guys, and just whoever wants to speak up. But first question, as leaders in the market for property management, how has your life changed since the lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, for our company, it's definitely was some scary times, right? The unknown, we just didn't know. But so we had to make some things and pivots and prepare ourselves for the worst. Fortunately, it never got that bad, right? So April, we finished at like 90% of our rents collected. This month, we're somewhere around 70%, and, it's around the 6th of the month. So we're trending in the right direction. I think a lot of people have been really responsible when it comes to our tenants. And I think that has to say to a lot of our tenant screenings and things like that. I think the biggest change that we've done is not going to the office and seeing our team, and, just the fun that we have been around our team has been probably our biggest challenge.
Yeah, for us, it's been honestly, it's been business as usual. I mean, we've adapted a few different things. We have an internal maintenance staff that has been they've been struggling with some things, when we left it up to them if they wanted to work or however we could do exterior work or that sort of thing. Fortunately, the weather was cooperating a little bit. We've had kind of a delayed spring. It seems like it's just been cold, like it's been colder than normal, which has been fine because normally in Indiana we go from like winter to have a weekend that's like pleasant and then deathly hot. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to complain about that, but but for us, it's really been, like Sterling nailed it. I think the people who are really struggling are the ones who didn't have a strong screening process up front. Mm-hmm. And I think from that point, if there's a lesson to be learned in this, and if you're in the middle of this, there's going to be things that you might be able to do in terms of working it out with people. But, don't set people up to fail. That screening process is in some way to help protect them from themselves, from making bad decisions.
Right.
There's a reason maybe you want to turn them down because they don't know any better. If they're putting 50, 60, 70% of their income is going to be devoted to rent, that runs them really, really lean when things go sideways in life. So you've got to have a really good screening process and you've got to stick to it. And this is also coming as an investor. I get it. I know how hard it is when you've had a property that's been vacant for a month or more and someone's standing there with $3,000 in cash ready to hand it to you. Man, that's hard to say no, but you've got to run them through the process, man. You've got to do it. And if anything, back in 2009, I got into a lot of trouble in my personal portfolio just because I was doing things just like that. Like I wasn't screening them. I wasn't running it through the system. I didn't have a systematic way of handling that sort of stuff. And it starts with credit screening and the rest of the process. So for us, it hasn't been too awfully terrible. I took a good solid couple of days and reached out to the residents, and but really I think we've been at 90, we've been about 90%, give or take, and we've had a little bit of struggles, but it's not been anything too terrible.
That's good. That's good to hear. Congratulations on that. I mean, there's people on completely opposite ends. Sounds like
when you hear that call from the weekend that says, "Hey, I'm ready to move in. I have money in hand." That's when you know, like, red flag, red flag, red flag. So
that's good to know.
If I could move in today, what's it going to take? You're like, man, I get it.
Yep.
It's funny. So how can property managers give their own confidence during this own time? What is it that you guys can give to other property managers to help them boost their confidence around this time?
Yeah, I think times like this is what Mark is talking about is so true. This is really business as usual, but also we do have these dead times right now where it's like not as busy, the phone's not ringing as much. And I think confidence comes in the ability to start working and refining those processes. Mm-hmm. Well, this is the perfect time for us. We meet on a daily basis, and I'm refining, I'm looking at my org chart, and I'm changing. Does that make sense? No, I need to move this over here. So I think, for me as a property manager and my other people that I'm talking to that are property managers, this is a time to really refine and trim the fat. It's so many things that we do on a daily basis that just doesn't really make sense. And I'm like, for me, we started trimming the fat before this when it came to expenses. So if we were to drop below a certain portion, it wouldn't kill us as much. So this is just another way inside our process that we're just trimming that fat, getting a little bit more lean so that we can be more effective in our business.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's gold. I think that to that aspect too is an opportunity to train, to relook at your processes from top to bottom. If there's stuff that is not absolutely essential and critical to delivering the product to your customer, and that's in any business. If it starts to get 2 and 3 degrees of separation away from delivering the product, an example that I use often, in my coaching, you'll have people, especially property managers, we love to do things to make our residents feel good, right?
Yep.
And if you're sending out birthday cards, that's great. But imagine the resident holding their birthday card going, okay, you can't, I've had a refrigerator that hasn't worked for 3 weeks, but you can send me a birthday card, right? And I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but this is more of a confession than it is a judgment, because I've been there. I've made those stupid mistakes. And again, there's so many mistakes that we can make along the way. And again, to be perfect 100% of the time it's not going to happen, but look at making sure that you're delivering the critical things before you start adding in the fluff. And this is an opportunity to really look at, just like Sterling said, look at your processes now, look at your infrastructure now. If it's time, like if you've been hem-hawing around about maybe looking at changing your property management software, we're heading into leasing season, which is typically the busiest time. We are busy, and we have been busy, but we're looking at other options, for property management software, or for, accounting software or whatever. Just maybe shifting things around, maybe turning some stuff over to a virtual assistant that you pay on an as needed basis, rather than having someone sit at a desk that's just going to be surfing Facebook for, 6 out of the 8 hours that you're going to have them there. It's just opportunities to look at changing your infrastructure and making it more efficient, more effective.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Basically refining what you guys already have, taking it and making it better.
I'll say, to add to Mark, it just, VAs has been one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And, understanding that business and really diving into what that process is to having a direct VA, it's a third of the cost. Like, I was kind of struggling in January. We were going to hire, we added 200 more doors, and I was like, I need to hire somebody. And then one of my friends was like, Sterling, you need to get a VA. It's like, oh, I can't do a VA. They're over there. I'm here. And so that was kind of game changing. Once I sat down, he kind of coached me through how the process worked. Now our leasing is covered by VAs, our maintenance is covered by VAs, and it's a third of what I was going to pay somebody on a salary.
Interesting. So now, how do you recommend property managers pivot in their business? What's something that it's kind of a bright light to you right now, and you guys have realized something, just a change in what you guys do?
Yeah, I think pivoting in business is very important. You know, I mean, I think you have to be able to adjust to the climate in the market. Now, you don't need to be a flag flapping in the wind and just moving with every wave that comes along. But I do think it's important to always be looking for that next opportunity. I mean, for us, we were able to pivot to like self-guided showing systems and things early, when people were very much, no, I show the house. And we added a call center pretty early on 8 years ago that changed our stuff, where people were like, no, I show the house. I take the calls. So I think it's important that you always are looking, like Mark said, if it's changing that software and looking for the next thing that can define your business, so that you can be able to grow or stay the same, but the most efficient way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that a little bit differently because I think you're spot on. So I'm going to answer this because there's some people that may be watching this that are more on the investor side. So, in terms of pivoting, I've been the buy and hold guy forever. Like, I will do very rarely would I do a, a wholesale deal or a flip here and things like that. But I'm pivoting in terms of my approach in terms of how I can help people. Because oftentimes I'll get people that maybe want to come to me because they want me to manage their property for them. But now I'm looking at it through a different lens and say, okay, well, what's actually your problem? Oh, your problem is actually you've got 2 payments you're making because you've moved, and you've got this payment you're making on a house that you live in Lexington, and you've got a house here in Indiana. Okay, well, what's really the problem? The problem is not that you can't sell the house. The problem is you've got 2 payments. So what can I do? Does it make sense to do a subject to deal or a lease option, or, on the acquisition side? And then maybe I take possession of the property, right? The property is deeded to me. And then on the disposition side, do I sell it? Do I lease it? Things like that. So right now, I'm really dusting off a lot of old books that in terms of just different real estate acquisition strategies, growth strategies. For the last 3-4 years, I remember people. I felt very judged because I wasn't out shaking the bushes doing deals. People like, man, how many deals have you done this year? I'm like, 0 or 1 or 2, and I felt very judged. But I was also very much my whole strategy after I got, the crap kicked out of me back in 2009, my acquisition strategy was hoarding cash and paying down debt. That's it. And because I was hoarding cash and paying down debt, it set me up. And again, no one in the world could have imagined a pandemic breaking out, right? Okay. Did anyone in the world ever imagine that 9/11 could have happened? Right? Did anyone in the world ever imagine that a mortgage crisis would basically sink, major corporations because of bad investments and bad debt, right? No, like all this stuff happens, but no one can imagine it. What's it going to be in the next 8, 7, 9 years or whatever cycle? Is it going to be aliens? Like, who knows? But the point is something's going to happen that we can't imagine. And people are thinking, that are buying it 90 to 100% of loan to value, or worse, 125% loan to value using OPM. That's exactly what got me into trouble back in 2009. So that's why I would say, like, for me, the pivot is, as I'm looking through the lens of an investor, is what are the tools in my toolbox that I could use to help solve other people's problems, not to take advantage of them, but what could I do to solve their problems? Because I'll tell you, if they've got a real problem, if they're paying 2 mortgages, that's going to be a problem that they're going to have to, do you have a way of solving that problem for them? And that's really where I think people can grow their portfolios. Not right away. I think that there's going to be time for that, but especially as we climb out of the as we climb back into some sense of normalcy in the economy.
No, I think Mark, you hit it on the head, man. I mean, I think a lot of people, like I have a lot of new investors in my portfolio. So, they in 2008, 2009, they were probably 21, right? Or 18 or in high school, right? So for them, this is the first time they've seen anything where they had to adjust or pivot. And I think a lot of them are learning the hard way because they read one book and they didn't diversify themselves to understand the limitations of their approach. Now they're trying to have to pivot in the midst of a storm, which is a lot harder than if you would have planned for this. And a lot of it comes to the leverage point that you mentioned. They over leveraged or they took too much out of the deal because really they were selling off future monies today back a year ago, right? So no, you're spot on with that, man.
This is
Well,
very.
I just want to point out I had a lot more hair back then. It was beautiful too. It was long, flowing locks.
I used to get haircuts back then. Right now, man, it's
Would
crazy.
you guys that recommend in simple words to make sure you diversify your real estate portfolio and not just stick to one focus? Is that something that you guys would?
I think here's the problem that I see is I think that they think that diversification means you have to do 50 different things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And to a certain extent, I don't think that that's bad, but in the real estate space, that's how you get, shiny objects blind you, right? Like you want to stay focused on something, but you want to make sure you're doing it right. And in this particular case, like, I do like the idea of diversification, when you're ready, like do one thing, get it right, get it down, get it running like a business, and then go on to the next thing. The thing where I have a struggle with is, especially with my coaching clients, from one moment to the next, they know if they're going to come to me with something, they better have a damn well good plan in terms of how they're going to implement it and do it well. Just like the whole idea with the birthday cards I talked about earlier, like how are you going to make sure that that's going to get done every single month over month without fail, without exception? If you can't do that consistently, then don't do it at all.
Yeah.
So that's why I would say before you try to diversify and get into all these other different things, get one thing down, get it running well. And again, don't feel like you can just abandon it, because Sterling, you probably will agree with me. The worst type of an investor or the worst type of owner that we have to deal with as property managers are ones that are not engaged.
Oh man,
like,
yes.
Dude, if I have to chase you down just to get an approval, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then when they jump in, they're like, "What? Hey, I was looking at my statement of January of 2 years ago." It's like, dude, I don't know what happened in January of 2 years ago.
And they're calling you on your cell phone on a Sunday.
Right. Like,
that's $7 you spent at Ace Hardware. Like, really?
No,
Yeah.
No, I think you're right, man. I think diversification is good. When I was speaking in more terms of like the education that you're able to get, I agree with Mark. I think you have to have a firm foundation. I think whatever you build that foundation on is what's going to grow. So if it's built on a rocky foundation that lacks process and honestly that lacks a certain sense of like focus and and you're always just looking at the shiny object, then it's probably going to fail. Right. For my business, honestly, the opposite has happened. I was probably more diverse 8 years ago than I am today. Now I very much have trimmed, and I'm very locked into this very small segment of a marketplace. And in Mark's story, he's very much similar how his property management business is too, where I think you start out like, I would do everything. I would manage everything. I would take on anything. And I think investors are like that. Early on, they're like, I'll buy anything. Is it a buy and hold? Can I leverage it? Yes. And then they finally realize they're like, nah, man, I want a suburb brick house, this foundation after this year. So the more and more that diversification becomes very narrow with maturity, I feel.
Mark, you might have more hair. No?
My hair used to look like yours, Rachel.
Pantene Pro V style. So
It was amazing.
So let's move on from there. This is great, by the way, guys. So thank you so much. This is the next question: how has rent collection been affected by the shutdown? I know you guys kind of went over it during the first question, but just real briefly, how has it affected you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said, like, it really hasn't been affected as much as I thought, right? Like, normally we get 99 to 100% of our people pay. Last month, we had a 10% delinquency that held over, which honestly, that 10% is like what Mark talked about. We have a group of people that do what called the BRRRR, the buy, rehab, the rent, the refinance, repeat. And we inherited some of those issues. And one of the issues is when you have people buying at the top of the marketplace, and then you have to get a certain rental amount, and they got that certain rental amount, but it stretched those tenants more than what they could deal with. So they couldn't pivot. Any fluctuation, they're hurting. So for us, we're feeling the effects of those 10%, and honestly, I mean, that 10% is the same 10% that we turn over every year. Those people are hopefully no longer, as we grow and we mature, we kind of filter through, but that's just kind of what we deal with as a property management company right now.
We didn't really notice it too much. I mean, we've got definitely, it's been about conversations. I don't have the numbers quite yet for May, but I know, I mean, just judging by the bank account, we're actually doing okay. But the main thing is that, I see the amount of workouts that we have to put in place and things like that. I think where it's really hurt us, because a substantial portion of our revenues do come from maintenance. So, I mean, from that aspect, we were, significantly down. But again, there's also other people that we have that are external vendors and things like that are definitely wanting to work and are willing to do whatever they need to do to make sure that they're keeping the wolf from the door. But we've also had, and again, this came at an unusual time where it came in the spring, where we have a fair amount of exterior work to do, whether that's, looking at treating exterior wood, or, I mean, I can't tell you how many mailboxes I have ended up painting, over the last couple of, just because of the exterior wood gets shot. But stuff like that needed to get done regardless. Again, because it's just cheaper to maintain it than it is to replace it. It's just obviously a good investment. But these are the sorts of things that, from the rent collection perspective, we haven't seen it too terribly bad yet. But also there's a tremendous amount of stimulus money that's going into the economy,
right?
With the Corona money or Trump money or whatever we're calling it. But from that side, I'm a little bit more worried about down the road, 6-8 months down the road.
Absolutely.
Because from an economic perspective, not to get into that discussion, but dollars, after $2 trillion have been injected into an economy, dollars are going to be worth less than they are today, right? Because there's just the way inflation works. That's got me concerned. So I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit more concerned about that. So, again, I think that might be a larger discussion than we're prepared for today. But
we might have that discussion in 6 to 8 months from now, Mark. I might be reaching out to you for that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Stimulus money don't work if it's not circulating and everybody's locked down, right? So, but also, I mean, we have taken different approaches, to this, where, we would never take a partial payment before this, but because we can't evict people anyway, we might as well get something rather than nothing. So last month, it was very much like, hey, we were scrambling and people were like, oh, actually, I paid my full rent. I'm like, oh, okay. So we kind of stayed and made sure we stayed in front of them probably twice as much as we normally do. And then, we even offered to our portfolios before the 1st of May, $50 if they paid off their rent if they paid before the 1st.
Yep.
Which really was a great incentive, but you know, the ones that probably took advantage of that was the same ones that was probably going to pay before the first anyway. So, you know, we have been testing things to see if it works, because this is just a different time than what we've ever done before. So I think you have to try it. I'm not a fan of like the approach where you take the person's security deposit and add that for the rents, and then, you know, down the road they replenish it. I'm not really a fan of that approach, just because I think security deposits are meant to be security deposits, and they're there for a reason. So I think you have to just make sure you do an approach when it comes to rent collection that works for you.
Yep.
So you kind of answered, Sterling, the very next question, which is what techniques have you used to ensure rental payments? It sounds like you guys have just mentioned it's better to get something rather than nothing at all. What about you, Mark? Have you had to use any techniques to ensure rental payments in the past 1 to 2 months?
We did we did an incentive as well in April. I think we tiered it, but we had an incentive where we offered someone, people a certain amount off if they paid by a certain day, right? If they paid early, and with rare exception, we had anybody that grouched about it. I mean, they were actually very grateful that we did something. So there was, for the main thing is just making sure that we're having conversations. I mean, the thing that really I want to bang my head against the desk about is I see a lot of stuff being circulated out there that, with, letters from landlords or property managers that are being circulated on these, sites that, for especially like in areas like New York, where people are feeling like they shouldn't have to pay rent and things like this. The reality is that, even if the government steps in and says, okay, well, no mortgage payments have to be made and therefore no rent payments have to be made, the fact of the matter is there's investors outside of the United States that don't have to don't have to listen to that. I mean, they're investors and they deserve their money. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I don't know how that can actually happen. I don't think people are really thinking that through. I mean, that's how wars get started. I don't think people are really actually thinking that through. So the reality is, everybody knows the rent's due. Like, there's no point in sending out blanket letters and blanket, you pay your rent or else. Like, just, dude, everybody knows they got to pay their way.
Right.
You're going to get that, that small exception, in my opinion, that's going to feel like they're entitled to not pay rent or whatever. But again, I think this also goes back to resident screening and making sure that you're doing the right things up front, not setting anybody up to fail. And you know what? If they don't get back to work right away, then you work that through. You play the hand you're dealt. Reach out to somebody that maybe has a little bit more experience than you. I mean, I know people can reach out to me. I'm sure that Sterling wouldn't mind just to give some advice. But the reality is just there's things that you can do once you're in that situation, but the ideal thing is prepare for the situation in advance. But again, if you're in it and you're pregnant with it, you just have to play the hand you're dealt.
Right.
All right, guys. So what does success look like after this is all over? Who knows when it's going to be over, but what does success look like to you?
I would say success looks like I didn't gain 20 pounds from eating too much. No. When it comes to my business and as an investor and what does success look like, it's the same goal that I had in the beginning of the year. It's the same that I'm always. It's that we're improving and that we're getting better and that we are more established by going through this this conflict than anything, right? I think this is, when I hear the stories that Mark talked about in 2008, 2009, I was, 20, 21 doing that. I wasn't investing then. So I didn't get those stripes then. Now I can say, hey, I went through this crisis and this is how I came out on the other side. So I think it's either going to go one or two ways for people. And I think we have a lot of control of that. I don't believe in the mindset of taking handouts and things. I think my destiny is determined how I look at this, and I look at this as an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity to grow. I look at it as an opportunity for investors that are struggling, for us to be able to come in and actually buy their properties. So for me, success looks like a healthy business, a healthy family, and me contributing to my community.
That's awesome. That's very good. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
that
Mark.
really is. That's spot on. I mean, for me, for those of you who know me, know that I'm very vision focused. I mean, it always goes back to originally what my vision is. And, that's my relationship with my God, my gal, and my guys, my two sons, like that's it, so it's, in my guns are in there too. God, gal, guys, guns, right?
You need a shirt that's like check, check, check.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
4 Gs.
Yeah, the 4 Gs. Yeah, exactly. So, but my relationship with my bride, my sons, that's the stuff that's really at the end of the day is focused to me. That's why I don't like, I don't get overly emotional about arguments that people want to say if we screwed up, we screwed up. We're just going to say, hey man, we're just going to try better next time. And if that costs us business, then, sorry, but we are going to mess up. That's going to happen. There's just too many balls that get thrown at us sometimes, and we're going to drop one or two here and there. That's going to happen. We accept the possibility and we move on and are liberated from it. We're not going to get frozen by it. But, if I'm closer to my vision at the end of this year than I was when I started, then that's success. And that's, right now, like I said, when we were talking earlier, I kind of miss my sons because they've been staying at my, at our in-laws or my in-laws. And, they've been there doing schoolwork and stuff like that. But, we're just trying to, we'd like to get them back to have some sense of normalcy, for the school year and stuff. But that's really success for me is, am I getting closer to my vision for what my life output is? It has nothing to do with business whatsoever.
Right. Right.
That's good.
So, right now, what do you guys think? Is it the right time for? Is it a time to sell, hold, or buy? In your opinion?
I think that could be answered, differently for different people, right? Different strokes for different folks. For me, I'm in sell mode, but I was in sell mode before this because I think what Mark said is true. I'm trying to get as liquid as possible. I want to get as much cash in my reserves as possible. So I'm making some changes with the properties that I own personally. So for me, I'm in sell mode, but that's not based off of the COVID-19 didn't make me into sell mode. I was in sell mode before this just because I have to improve the quality of my portfolio. My portfolio is mainly made up of urban houses. So I think it's time that I kind of take that next step and get more stability inside my portfolio personally. So that's kind of the strides that I'm making. But, honestly, I think it's the perfect time when I'm coaching people. It's the perfect time if you can find the right deal to buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's just if you can find the right deal right now, where it's only 1,000 houses in Marion County on the market. But, I think you have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, in my particular case, I go back to what's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? Because for some people it might mean selling, for some people it might be buying, and for some people it might be holding. It just, again, what's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? And that's why when I get messages all the time, hey, I've got this deal, blah, 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 and they launch into the whole aspects of the deal. And I it's almost always with this universal retort, what are you trying to accomplish? What's your end goal here? And that usually stops people in their tracks to be like, well, for more money. Like, okay, what are you going to do with the money?
Right.
They're like, I don't know, for an extra zero in my account, right? Like that's not enough for me. Yeah, more money is generally better than less money, but if it's going to take if it's not gonna add to the quality of life for you, then, and it's going to detract from the quality of life for you, then why do it at all? For every additional unit that you acquire, rather than looking at, does it add an extra digit in my bank account? What's the life output that it adds to? Does that mean that you get to work 2 hours less per week or 2 hours more per week? What's the life output goal that you're ultimately getting? And I know that maybe sounds, for people who haven't heard me before, they're like, oh, here we go. What's he talking about? Well, the whole point of investing is actually to increase your life output, right? I mean, if it's the sake of doing a deal just for the sake of doing a deal, fine, just do that. If that adds to your level of significance and importance, or contributes to whatever you want, then fine. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, the litmus test is, does it get me closer to my vision, and does that help solve a problem for someone else? And that's really it. And so whatever the deal needs to look like is what the deal needs to look like.
So now, have you guys actually seen any neighborhoods that's been affected by the virus?
So in my opinion, like I have seen some affected, but it's more in the higher end. I think higher end homes are just, the first, any adjustment in the market, the higher end places are going to be the one that kind of takes that hit in those days on the market. For the average home of that 175,000 and things, those homes are still selling. I think for the most part, Indiana is a very neutral market, and that's why investors love Indiana, because we don't have those ebb and flows of like ups and downs and curves and spins, and so I think that's the beauty of it, and that's why people like dumping their money into this, because we don't get hit as hard by some of these things that are happening right now.
I'm in the Lafayette market, so primarily, although we do have some down in Sterling's neck of the woods, but we haven't really seen much. I mean, in terms of the different markets that have been hit, at least in terms of investment, I think it's too early to tell. So, but right now, as Sterling alluded to, I mean, I think there's 40 days of inventory on the market, which is really, really, really low. Yeah. And so it's a real seller's market. So if someone that maybe is wanting to sell, it's definitely a good time to sell.
I agree.
So then how has the market, do you feel like, has adjusted to this lockdown? I know that kind of coincides with what question I just asked, but how has the market adjusted to this lockdown?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to the rental market, I would say it adjusted really well. I think we were very scared about it at one point, and I love how it has adjusted. It was this in January and February. We probably had the worst time leasing out properties, December, January, and February than we had in the last 8 years, which is why I don't know. Right? It was just slower. It was tougher for us. So when it's starting to heat up again, though, it started to do what Mark was talking about, going into the warmer months. We're starting to see it. Last year around this, when it's in our July, August, we were releasing out in about 9 days. We're not quite there yet, but we see the momentum shifting there, and that's what's positive for me, is to see that our market is making that adjustment still. And we're not just at a standstill. People are still moving into houses. People are still wanting to leave their house if they see fit. So the market is responding as well as I think it could.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we had to get a little bit creative in terms of how we were doing showings. We evolved to virtual showings, which generally we don't allow people to make a commitment unless them or their representative actually walked the property. Just because, I mean, that always in the past has blown up on us,
Always.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Like we love this place and they want to throw money at you, and then they get there and they're like, yeah, we don't want it, like, and I get it. I understand it, but it's very, very frustrating for us. So we did have to shift to that, but that's not, with a few exceptions, it's really not been terrible. But we just let people know, like, hey, we're just going to keep showing this property until it gets rented. until someone signs a lease and moves in and takes possession. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been a little bit of the change, but we've also got a leasing agent that our previous leasing agent who was with us for many years. She decided to go and be a stay-at-home mom, which is super awesome. But we've got this younger gal who is, she's, very social media savvy and doing a lot of stuff that way. And it's just been, which wasn't really my thing on the property management side, but she's been knocking it out of the park and getting it done. So it's been we had to pivot a little bit, but it wasn't terrible.
So what do you think that, I guess, how long do you think the market is going to stay like this? What is your prediction on, this year, whether it's months or years? How long do you think this is going to stay like this?
I think Mark hit it on the head. We really don't know what's to come. I think our market, like I said, is very neutral in a way. I do think this is a health crisis more than a financial crisis in 2008, 2009. So my feeling is as the health crisis subside, the market will bounce back to where it was. That's just my personal opinion. I think, where we are sitting today is very much an unknown, place. So as people get back to work, people start working again, people taste the outside and realize like the outside is not poison. I think houses and our market will go back to a free-flowing marketplace. So how soon that will happen, I have some hopes and dreams of, but I can't say for definite what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think anybody knows what to predict. I mean, if I was going to make a prediction with a gun to my head, I would say it's probably, the housing market, the rental market has been strong. The housing market has been strong. The fundamental difference between 2009 and now is that there was an oversupply of housing. There's not an oversupply of housing. There's still a fundamental, high demand for housing. And that, hasn't really necessarily, it hasn't translated into exact rental pricing, but I also suspect that we're going to start to see some of that rental. If I had to predict, you're going to see some rental pricing increase near the end of the year. If I had to predict that, again, because of the so much increased liquidity in the economy, you're just going to see a lot of that, a lot of increased rent pricing come up. I just think that's a natural, just basic economics.
Yeah, that's you hit it. That's true, man. I thinking about like the supply and demand of houses right now compared to 2008, 2009, we just don't see that same effect in the surplus of housing.
Okay, so last question of the day, and you guys have done great. So as someone who is building a real estate business, and this applies to me and so many people who are part of Cyria and so many people who are interested in Cyria, but what is your best advice to give to all of us?
Yeah, I think, for myself, I don't want to step on Mark because I know his thing is his mission and vision. So for me, I think it's really identifying and diving into places like Cyria right now, and diving into bigger pockets, diving into those things that give you real information so that you can start learning and pivoting and actually doing. I think a lot of people, when I first got into this, I prayed and I said, God, I just want to be available. I just want to be available. I just want to learn. I want to be able to, talk to people like Mark or talk to people like Rachel and just learn. So I think that's what I would say is as you start building it, the best way to learn is to start finding people and asking questions. And don't be afraid of like, hey, can I have a 5-minute phone call with you, Mark, just to pick your brain? And I think that's where we really is going to be your best bet of getting a tool so that you really know what you're doing after this is all over. Like I've been listening to so many audibles. I've been the podcasts. You know, these are the things that kind of fuel me, so that when I'm out of this, I'm hitting the ground, really running for the future.
Yeah, you didn't step on me at all. The only thing that I would add to it from my lens is do exactly that same thing. Just make sure it's in alignment with what you're actually trying to accomplish. You know, if you are going to, take the time right now to pour into yourself, which I'm doing. I will not show you my desk, but it's stacked with books of like different things, and I'm going back and forth because I'm reminding myself of different techniques and different things I used to do. But it's all for, if I'm going to pivot, that's fine, but pivot toward and stay focused on my vision, like as I'm charging up this hill, well, I can't get up the hill because there's a log fell down in front of me. Okay, but I'm still keeping an eye on my vision. So maybe I'll go around the log, or I'll go over the log, or go through it, or whatever. But, or maybe I'll go back down and go another way. But I mean, the whole point is I'm staying focused on that vision. So, from that perspective, I think it's really, really important that you know why you're doing it, what you're trying to accomplish. And I don't mean like, well, I want 100 rental units, because I'm going to come back to you with the universal retort, why not 99? Why not 101? Right? It's probably more tied to a revenue goal. Don't confuse a unit count with life output. Don't think that 100 rental units is going to buy you this certain amount of life output. If anything, it's going to take away from that. Yep. If you don't have the right processes and infrastructure. So in that particular case, if you are going to take the time to learn and do this stuff, that's fantastic, but have a vision in place. So when we do come out of this and you are able to step foot outside that house, that you're going to take action. Don't just, if you're doing this education for the purpose of just kind of learning it, that's really expensive entertainment, really expensive. Especially for people who are buying courses and stuff like that. I mean, I had probably one of my best months last month from people buying different courses and packages and stuff. But I'm reaching back out to them going, why did you buy this? Are you actually going to take action on this? And I think some of them are a little bit like, whoa, dude, like I didn't pay for coaching. I'm like, I know, but I'm not going to let you just spend the money for the sake of spending the money, because I want to see that you're actually going to take action on this stuff. And some of them, I think, were a little rattled by that, but that's not what I'm about. I'm not about selling packages or that sort of thing. I'm actually making sure that people are focusing on the right things and they are going to take action when it's appropriate.
I totally see that happening, Mark. Mark is a business coach of mine, so I can actually say he will get on you about that. So, well, thank you two so very much. These two are so integral and such a huge part of Cyrea, and they're always they're almost at pretty much every single event, any big events they're at. They're always available, very eagerly available to anybody who asks for help or seeks for help. And I think that's why we love these two so much, is because they're wanting to help anybody who's in the real estate investment world, and just to provide their many years of wisdom that they've got into this. So I will be providing all of their links and websites and contact information, if that's okay with you guys, so that people can have an easy way to reach out to you. Cyrea, we are a community that wants to help out. So open doors. Vicki Perry is always welcoming everybody who wants to. Just give her a call. She almost always will answer her phone call if you just want to reach out to her. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this. And hopefully, I think this month we can slowly start getting in the groove and maybe bumping elbows. So, all right.
All right. Thanks, Rachel.
All right.
Thanks so much.
You.